Welcome to today's NAIOP Solutions Series program, which is titled Some Green You Care About. My name is Sheila Vertino, and I'll be your host for today's program. As many of you know, the Solutions Series programs are available at no cost to NAIOP members. They're kind of mini webinars, and they typically run less than 30 minutes. Our goal for each program is to be real positive, provide you with quick tips and insights, strategies, tactics, that kind of thing, help you succeed in today's rather tough business environment. We encourage you, as always, to help us with the content. What would you like to hear about? You can send us an email to solutions@naiop.org. Let us know topics, maybe presenters, things that you would like to learn from in future programs. Some topics require a more in-depth discussion than we can offer at a solution series short time frame. And so for that, NAIOP has 90-minute webinars. And these webinars are fully interactive. They let you submit questions and to the presenters during the program. So the next full webinar will take place on Thursday, February 3rd. As you can see, it's the National Office Market Outlook. And during this webinar, it will give you an overview of the office market, discuss how the economic recovery will impact this sector in the coming year. The cost of the full webinar is $65 for NAIOP members, $95 for non-members. And if you'd like to register for the 90-minute webinar, you just go online to naiop.org/webinars. And now we're ready to begin our program today. With us is Dan Cohen, Vice President at Amstar Group, LLC, a Denver-based real estate private equity firm. Daniel is an asset manager for more than $250 million of Amstar's total portfolio. In his development and acquisitions, which include all major product types, he has made profitable, sustainable improvements central to his value-add strategies. Dan is also involved in the NAIOP National Forums program as Vice Chair of the Sustainable Development Forum. Welcome, Daniel, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Appreciate it, and welcome, everyone. Let me start by telling you a little bit about who I'm not, just so you don't get the wrong impression about where this is going. I am not a zealous environmentalist. I'm not a big fan of the green building community's most moral arguments. I'm not LEED certified. And I'm actually not someone who assumes that sustainability equals value or that it doesn't. I am an asset manager at Amstar, and the Amstar itself is a established investment manager based in Denver, as Sheila mentioned. We've been around more than 20 years and managed over that time about $3.5 billion of real estate covering the 5 major real estate food groups, including acquisitions and development. Amstar itself does not have a specific green mission, but we are eager to add value, and we're agnostic about how that happens. And so that's what in part kind of leads me to the conversation today. I'm also the Vice Chair of NAIOP's Sustainability Forum, also as Sheila mentioned, which is a great group of senior professionals from all around the country that get together twice a year at the NAIOP forums and talk about the intersection between green building and profitability. Always want to be right down the middle of that fairway. It's a very interesting group, very dynamic, and if anyone is interested in talking further about that forum, shoot me an email or give me a call after the presentation. I'd love to talk about it with you. And finally, I'll just say that the comment on LEED here, that LEED and not limited to LEED, but other building certifications that are similar are really about green and, not necessarily about adding value, which is what I think the landlord's role is. So sometimes green and value overlap, and that's again what drives a lot of the following suggestions. So the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about this presentation real quickly. It is simply about suggesting ways for landlords for existing buildings to add value through utility savings and lower repairs and maintenance costs. I think from experience that these are often the easiest dollars that you can find, easiest NOI dollars that you can find, I should say. They're, most of these problems are very common. The solutions are feasible. They're inexpensive. And these following are, from my experience, most likely to be profitable recommendations that apply to most commercial real estate buildings. And they also improve a landlord's image, a lot of them, as you'll see. And I say that from the perspective of fiduciary, not, again, from the perspective of a zealot. We've benefited materially from the press that we've gotten from a number of our what you'd call green upgrades, especially the most visible ones, including one solar project that I'm thinking of that got just a ton of press locally and in a lot of industry publications, and frankly more than I thought it deserves, to be honest, but I'll certainly take it. Bottom line here, though, is if you are lucky enough to own a fully leased triple net building, your incentive for lowering operating expenses is slim to none, especially if tenants aren't going to pay for those upgrades. But for me and for most landlords I know, we're still looking hard for tenants, and we want to drive them to our buildings. And these suggestions that follow, can create some low-hanging fruit that can start you on the path to sustainable cost savings in a more sustainable building. So with that, let's get into it. Number one.
Before you begin your presentation, I just want to ask you one thing. Can you speak a little bit louder?
Sure.
It's not coming through as clearly as it did earlier. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Should I just start off with number one?
Yes.
Okay. Number one, get an energy audit. So I know this, that by itself, getting an energy audit is not accretive, but there are many huge rebates and offsets available. And one thing an energy audit is by itself is cheap. And although these vary in quality depending on the engineers that you use, they will point you toward at least a few big ROI projects you didn't already know about from listening to the rest of this presentation. My suggestion here, we've had the best luck in talking to utilities and state energy offices. They will have a list of approved energy auditors, and those folks tend to be the most knowledgeable and understand the most about rebates, which we'll get into later. So I would start there when you get an audit. And I've seen audits cost as little as $200 for a full, multi-day project. So I'm happy about that. So number two, this one I guess is obvious, but getting other people's money. After you've got an energy audit in hand, before you do anything, it's great to research how to pay for some of the suggestions in the audit. And there are two great ways to do that. One of them is using an auditor themselves. They usually have a higher degree of awareness about what's available, but also this website. And we'll talk about other websites later in the presentation, but this is one of the best in terms of being a one-stop shop. It's called Desire, Database of State Incentives for Renewables and Efficiency. This has a comprehensive list of what's available. They keep it current. I'm a big fan of it. And interestingly, they, despite the name, it's actually got a whole section on federal incentives also. So a real one-stop shop for landlords to find out what kind of efficiency funding there is available. Number three, in the same vein, getting paid to save water. Water utilities love landlords. This is what we've learned, that put in more efficient fixtures, and they will rebate some or all of the cost to buy and install things like new toilets and sinks. In our experience, the local water provider has a list of approved fixtures, including, like I said, toilets, sinks, urinals, but cooling tower equipment and other HVAC-related stuff too. And I'll give you an example. We actually saw a project, wasn't in Denver, in which the landlord had its cost for a toilet retrofit. This was in a hotel, so there was a number of fixtures, fully reimbursed. And then we saved $30,000 a year on water going forward, which all flowed to the bottom line, no pun intended. So it can be very accretive. I'll give you another example. Denver Water here will give you a $125 rebate per toilet if the toilet uses an average of 1.28 gallons per flush or less, which is kind of the magic number for what defines a highly efficient toilet. And if you went online after this, in 5 minutes you could find a few of these toilets on Home Depot or any other website that sells these for toilets that actually cost less than $125, but that use 1.28 or less, fewer gallons per flush. So again, this is an efficient way to get these in. Number four, bonusing the team. This has been very, very effective for us, mostly because I'm not that good at coming up with good efficiency ideas. I like to leave that to the pros. But we've linked compensation for our building engineers to achieve savings. And this puts, obviously, the management and engineering teams in the hunt for improvements. It's good to do this after you've gotten them dangerous with excuse me, an energy audit first. and then we've structured their bonuses so that they've added real value by year end with operating expense savings. There is some management finesse required here, obviously, but I've seen cultures where our most experienced technicians have good reasons to find these financially accretive projects for us. And when that's working, it helps me as a fiduciary feel very comfortable that we're effectively doing all we reasonably can to run an efficient building. So I like that. A secondary benefit is actually probably no less important, is that doing this encourages a culture of measurement and accountability, because all savings obviously needs to be demonstrated versus a baseline use amount or a baseline cost. And in the spirit of what gets measured gets done, this has helped us understand much better where we're using power and water and where we can get it fixed, and focus the engineers on that, which is very much related to the expense itself. So it's been good for the culture in a lot of ways. Number 5, starting to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit here. In my experience, any property that we own that's been more than a year old, there was some system, HVAC system, that was not optimized, which is real soon after, obviously, a property gets built. You often see one example of heating and cooling equipment being on and working at the same time. So a good way to address that is to contract with maybe one of the companies here, another HVAC company, for what I would call a simple test and balance scope. This is a third-party investigation. They come in, they look at your systems, and they give you effectively a diagnosis of what's wrong and what could be better. They don't do any of the fixes generally during this investigation. You know, these firms love this kind of work, right? Because it's kind of like taking your car to the repair shop. They will tell you all the things that are wrong with it in the hopes of obviously getting the work afterwards. Excuse me. Now, whether or not you give them this work is up to you, but at least you see flagged all the things for your engineering team to look at, if nothing else. So you can often get the price for these test and balance scopes down to very manageable amounts. Number 6, this follows on from number 5. It's related to the previous. So with the test and balance, that's essentially the third party getting you to a starting gate, and now you got to run. And running is all about understanding what's going on with your energy management system, EMS. So in our experience, maintaining comfortable temperatures is about as far as most people ever get with their EMS. One way that we've gotten past that and started to really engage on efficiency is having our chief engineer and our buildings walk us through every detail of the energy management system to make sure that it's working. And I say in the how bullet here, it's good to schedule this well in advance, because you know, they often don't know, and so they need to spend a lot of time coming up to speed. But that process obviously is very valuable, and you can find savings there. These systems, as you likely know, are highly sophisticated. They need regular staff training, a lot of processes involved that need to be monitored, timers, schedules, and then the analysis of outcomes. It's more like being a data detective than the nuts and bolts that building engineers are usually associated with. So it's technical, it's hard. And like I said, I don't think many building engineers know more than kind of 50% of how the software works. And also, one final thought is that oftentimes these systems need to be tuned up, and that can be even in a recommissioning process. So it's good to really stick your nose in this and figure out what's going on. Number 7, to the even more nitty-gritty, is a lighting retrofit. A lot of people have done this. This is often the lowest hanging fruit in any building, but a few words on it. One is that this can be done very quickly, even if it involves replacing ballasts as well as the light bulbs. In office buildings, what this usually looks like is going from a T12, T is tubular and 12 is 12/8 of an inch, so a fairly thick diameter bulb, to a T8 or a T5, and T8s are kind of 40% more efficient, I've heard, and T5s are more than that, maybe 51%, but T5s start to be more expensive. Interestingly, coming down the pike here are LED tube lights too. They exist, they're expensive, but they're much more efficient, and they last, virtually forever. So I think we're going to start to see more of that now. I haven't done a cost benefit on those. We haven't put them in any of my buildings, but I imagine that's going to happen in the next year or two. But in addition to the lighting retrofit proper, while you're at it, it's smart to test the lighting levels in a few high-traffic areas and offices. You know, most spaces that when we've done this, we've realized that they are overlit, and they would benefit actually from having fewer ballasts or fixtures. So it's not as simple as just replacing the bulbs. You can actually do yourself a favor by testing these lighting levels. I guess the point is that highly efficient fixtures are commodities, but the industry is evolving very, very quickly, and it's hard to know how much actual light you need in any one space. So that's why under the how here, I recommend talking to a lighting engineer, because it's often worth the fee. It results in, you can get more savings out of someone who really knows what they're doing. On a related note to that, number 8 is moving over to occupancy sensors. And I list under why here a few of the places where they're most valuable, where effectively without them you're often lighting areas where there aren't any people. And those are obviously big sources of totally unnecessary energy use. 2 benefits for this. One, I guess, is that it's cheap. These used to be very expensive, and now they're priced as a commodity. And they're actually now much easier to install than they used to be. So this overall is an upgrade that's very easy to execute. The other benefit here is that they make a great impression on tenants. It looks like you're in a 21st century building all of a sudden. And that's material. We've had a lot of tenants notice that and comment on it when they've been touring spec suites in some of our office buildings. So it's been very helpful. And one thing on this front that's coming down the pike, it actually exists now, but it's not widespread, is that some of these lighting controls, the actual switches, connect to the ballasts wirelessly, which is pretty cool because you don't have to install any wiring from the switch to the ballast. Again, I haven't run a cost-benefit on that yet. It's not, I don't know that that's a commodity at this point, but the installation can take 10 to 15 minutes, I read, which is great, and I imagine that's going to become more and more the norm as time goes on. So, moving on to number 9, very technical here for those that aren't familiar with it. Variable frequency drives, that's VFD, also called variable speed drives. So what this is, real quick, if you don't know, these drives actually modify the speed of your fan in your air handler. And obviously the air handlers push air through the building, and thus you can push air around the building at different rates if your fan can go at different speeds. It seems intuitive that you would want a fan to do that, but older or less expensive air handlers typically came with just these 2 speeds, on and off, and this addresses that problem. So why is that better? The different available speeds means you don't have cycles constantly starting and stopping, and it actually takes a lot of power to turn these things on and then turn them off. This will keep them on, but operating, you know, at an appropriate rate. And you also end up reducing pretty significantly how much fresh air you have to condition. So depending on your climate, you can get different benefits from that, but it can be pretty significant. This one in the lighting retrofit, I'll just editorially add here that those 2 tend to be the highest ROI projects that we've seen as sort of the first blush, top 10 things we do in any specific building. These tend to have the highest returns on investment. So number 10, staying smart. There's an interesting problem in the green building movement, which is that there are a lot of very smart research and technically oriented people working on various energy efficiency upgrades for buildings, but their ability to market their inventions and improvements is challenged. I should say at least the mass commercial real estate markets have had a hard time digesting what's at effectively the cutting edge of these things, even if the improvement itself is a high ROI, type of improvement. So there are plenty of public and private organizations rather, and institutions and companies that are trying hard to bring these fancy new products to market. It's hard to stay on top of it. And there's actually some great stuff coming down the pike. We talked about it a little bit, but super insulating windows, they give you an R11 insulating factor, which, window retrofits, you don't hear about them often, and they're not, generally economical, but when you start getting up to those very high R values, that may change the equation. Light louvers, paste bombs are coming back, given some legislation in Congress likely this coming year. Auto-dimming windows, and even rapid digital modeling of your existing building, for which you may not even have any kind of as-built or other architectural plans. You could get them in a in a matter of minutes. This stuff is pretty cool. It's coming down the pike, and it could be very helpful to you, and it's hard to stay on top of it. So I recommend here staying in the loop. And there's actually an easy way to do this, either yourself or having your team stay in the loop. My trick is that I get magazines, and I look through them, and if I look at the advertisements, and I put one into this slide, if I have no idea what this advertisement is actually for, I'm doing the right thing. And I suggest that to people because that signifies that this magazine is really at the cutting edge for that particular discipline. This came out of a plumbing journal. And this magazine is likely going to hear first about new technologies and assess it and write some sort of article about it. And so you'll end up hearing about things pretty early. And that's helpful. Now, obviously, not all ideas are great ideas, but you'll at least be aware and flag something for maybe future investigation if you wouldn't want to move on it right then. I put 5 of the best journals, magazines that I get here, and you can go to these websites and sign up for them. Most of these are free, actually, which is even better. The ones that aren't are very low cost, so it's easy to get on the list here and start getting these things. And I highly recommend it. So that's really it. I mean, those are 10 pieces. It's not, or 10 pieces of advice. It's not rocket science, but these should be, materially helpful if you have at all an inefficient building going forward. And I think that you could do all these things at pretty low all-in cost. And every building that we've done it for, we've recognized some meaningful savings, and it's been accretive to our NOI. So I highly recommend it. And happy to take any questions or comments. You have my contact info on your screen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. That was really a great presentation. Very practical, very positive tips for people who want to really get started and get some quick payback on the any green initiatives. As we said earlier, the next Solutions Series program will be available on February 8th. We encourage you to watch your email. You'll get a new newsletter. It's called NAIOP Source. That's the new corporate newsletter, and there'll be an article in there with the program link. So if you have questions, again, about today's program, please refer them to Dan's contact information on the screen. If you have topics or comments that you'd like to direct toward the Solution Series program, you can reach us by sending an email to solutions@naiop.org. Thank you again, Dan, and thank you all for listening to our session. Goodbye for now.